This multi-agency operation led by DEA with our local, state, tribal, and federal partners targeted one of the largest and most dangerous drug trafficking and foreign terrorist organizations in our country.
3:47 a.m., Harris County, Texas. The street is silent. No lights, no movement. Nothing to suggest that the most consequential federal operation in Texas history is already in motion. Ground-penetrating radar had just hit something solid, 11 feet down, not bedrock, not a buried pipe. A room. Reinforced concrete walls, ventilation shafts, and a door, freshly oiled, hinges still gleaming, opening directly beneath the private wine cellar of a sitting federal district judge. Special Agent Dara Okonkwo pulled off her headset and said 3 words into her radio. "We've got it." What they found on the other side of that door didn't just end a 14-month investigation. It rewrote everything federal command believed about who was protecting the Sinaloa cartel inside southeast Texas. 129 arrests, 8.1 tons of narcotics, 47 firearms, and a name on a cartel payment ledger that made a 22-year FBI veteran's hands shake when he typed the confirmation request to Washington. If you believe corruption at the highest levels demands exposure, hit like right now, so this video reaches the people who need to hear it. To understand how we got here, you need to go back 16 months. It starts with a traffic stop that nobody planned for. 10:58 p.m. The Port of Houston Access Road, Southeast Industrial Corridor. An ICE surveillance unit flags 3 refrigerated semi-trucks rolling in tight convoy formation. No running variants. Moving exactly 14 minutes ahead of their filed agricultural transit schedule, like someone had already cleared the route ahead of time. The permits were forged, the inspection seals were counterfeit, and every vehicle was running a signal jammer registered to a construction company that had never built a single structure. Within 36 hours, DDIA analysts in Washington were staring at a pattern spanning 13 months, 7 counties, and what they now believed was the most protected Sinaloa distribution corridor ever embedded inside American soil. The numbers were already terrifying. Investigators estimated 3.4 tons of mixed narcotics had moved through this corridor undetected. Over $47.6 million in cartel cash had been laundered through Houston commercial real estate, and somewhere inside the federal court system. Someone had been quietly killing warrants, dismissing cases at the motion stage, and shielding cartel-linked properties from asset seizure. Before a single piece of evidence could be presented. But here's what nobody knew yet. The encrypted files recovered from that first ICE intercept contained a folder. One folder, labeled simply Blueprint. What was inside that folder paralyzed federal command for 72 hours. One of the seized burner phones had a federal government email address attached to it, and the convoy that night had been tipped off 11 minutes before agents moved. Someone inside the operation had talked. The mole hunt had just begun. Type exposed below if you want to follow this video to the end. It goes further than you think. The task force assigned to Operation Corridor Shield, led jointly by FBI Houston's Organized Crime Division and an ICE Homeland Security Investigations Unit, began mapping the network from the outside in. 6 weeks of surveillance. 17 physical locations cataloged across Harris, Fort Bend, Brazoria, Galveston, and Jefferson counties. 42 known individuals flagged for monitored communication intercepts. Senior Task Force Commander Agent Marcus Tellis described the architecture as the most structurally sophisticated domestic cartel operation his unit had ever traced. Not a loose network, not a fragmented cell system, a layered, redundant infrastructure with contingency protocols built into every tier. Cash moved through a chain of 14 shell companies, all registered in Texas, all operating under legitimate-sounding fronts. A restaurant chain with 9 locations across southeast Texas. 2 private charitable foundations and a cluster of fake construction invoice firms. The money flowed upward through each layer and landed in one place. A private legal trust account, 1 authorized signatory. The Honorable Judge Sylvia Renee Colton, Federal District Court, 17 years on the bench, appointed, confirmed, and trusted by the institutions that now had her name on a cartel payment ledger. In the task force's field office on the 7th floor of the Houston Federal Building, no one spoke for nearly 2 minutes after her name appeared on the screen. This wasn't a bad actor at the margins of the system. This was the system. Share this video with someone who thinks judicial corruption only happens in other countries. It happened here. But Judge Colton wasn't the architect. The blueprint file made that clear. She was a critical node, not the designer. Someone above her had built this structure. Someone whose name appeared in no financial record because they were never paid in cash. Someone who had spent over a decade in a position that gave them advanced visibility into every major federal interdiction plan before it launched. The task force had their judge, but the real target was still invisible. And then, on a Thursday morning in October, an encrypted drive cracked. What loaded onto the analyst's screen wasn't a financial record. It wasn't a communication log. It was a roster. Names. But positions. Monthly payment amounts. All of them disguised as legal consulting contracts routed through the same shell architecture that had moved $47.6 million in cartel money through Houston real estate. The analyst pushed back from her desk without speaking. She called her supervisor, said nothing. Just turned the monitor around. Hit like if this is the kind of video that should never be buried. It's just getting started. 4:17 a.m. Harris County. 8 simultaneous breach locations. FBI tactical units move like shadows through pre-dawn fog. No sirens, no warnings. Flashbangs detonate in rapid sequence. Doors splinter. Agents in full tactical gear pour through 6 target sites across the Gulf Coast corridor, while 2 maritime interdiction vessels run parallel operations on Sinaloa shipping routes in Galveston Bay. It is not chaos. It is precision. At a cold storage warehouse complex near Pasadena, DIA tactical units find a distribution hub disguised as a licensed agricultural freezer facility. Floor-to-ceiling shelving units. Behind them, 2.1 tons of cocaine, 847,000 fentanyl pills, 19 kilos of black tar heroin, methamphetamine packaged in industrial quantities, 31 military-grade rifles, 9 semi-automatic pistols, body armor in a sealed plastic crate, body armor stitched with Houston Police Department markings. Agents stop moving for 3 seconds. Nobody says a word. At a luxury estate off Richmond Avenue in Sugar Land, cartel logistics coordinators are already burning documents in a fire pit when ICE strike teams breach the perimeter wall. 2 men sprint for a vehicle near the rear gate. Neither reaches it. In a converted auto repair shop on Highway 90, agents find something that no one on the task force had been briefed for. A server rack. Military-grade encryption hardware. A hardwired fiber connection running to an address not listed on any raid manifest. When the first analyst pulls the initial file from those servers, she sees Border Patrol shift schedules. Real ones. Current ones. Color-coded by what the document labels as vulnerability windows. This is no longer a drug bust. Comment reveal below if you want to see where this tunnel leads. What came next changed everything. FBI Cyber Command establishes a temporary field office on the 4th floor of the Houston Federal Building. Analysts work in rotating 90-minute shifts. The encryption on those servers is not cartel-built. It is federal contractor grade, the kind used in government infrastructure projects. It takes 4 hours to crack the outer layer. When the first directory opens, the lead analyst physically stands up from her chair. The financial architecture inside those servers is extensive. 14 shell companies, cross-referenced and layered. Fake construction invoices. Restaurant chain billing entries. Charitable foundation disbursements. All of it cycling through the same legal trust account. And all of it traceable in every direction back to the Sinaloa distribution network operating across southeast Texas. The money trail is explicit. Cartel distribution cells to shell invoicing accounts to legal consulting fee deposits. Clean, systematic, deliberate. And Judge Colton's trust account is only one destination. The roster the analyst had turned her monitor around to show her supervisor. It contains 31 names. 19 Houston area law enforcement personnel across 3 agencies, 6 state officials, 4 sitting judges including Colton, and 2 names inside U.S. Customs and Border Protection's Port of Houston Supervisory Division. Border Patrol agents had been logging false patrol route data, creating invisible corridors timed to Sinaloa convoy windows. Judges had been killing cases at the motion stage before evidence could be entered into record. State officials had quietly killed 2 asset seizure reform bills in legislative committee over 3 consecutive sessions. It was not a few bad actors, it was a parallel system, a second infrastructure answering entirely to the cartel. If this shocks you, hit like so this video reaches people who still believe the system is clean. That's back beneath the judge's property. The tunnel tells its own story. FBI structural engineers document it in methodical detail. The passage runs 340 feet from a concealed entry point beneath a cartel-linked industrial storage unit on the adjoining parcel to the wine cellar access door beneath Judge Colton's estate. Poured concrete walls, 8 inches thick. A ventilation system hardwired into the estate's HVAC infrastructure. Disguised as a secondary air return duct on every inspection report filed over the past 6 years. Rail tracks. LED lighting mounted at 12-foot intervals. A hydraulic lift platform rated for 2,000 pounds of cargo. Construction grade, permanent, built not to be discovered. Forensic engineers estimate the tunnel took between 18 and 24 months to construct. It runs entirely beneath private property, never crossing a public right-of-way. Every permit filed for renovation work on the estate during that construction window had been approved without a single site inspection. Those approvals carried one judge's signature. The same judge whose name appears on the cartel payment ledger. Share this with someone who doesn't think this level of corruption is possible in America. This happened in Houston, on American soil. Operation Corridor Shield now has its name. It also has a joint task force of 1,100 federal agents, 44 SWAT teams, 12 Black Hawk helicopters, and a DEA financial crimes unit that has spent 14 months building a case that reaches from a Port of Houston convoy stop to a wine cellar 11 feet underground. But the task force is about to learn something that reframes every arrest, every seizure, and every line in every ledger they've recovered. The blueprint folder contains one final file. Not financial records, not communication logs, not another roster. A map. 3 cities: Dallas, San Antonio, New Orleans. Each one flagged with a single notation. Operational, Phase 2, active. The Houston network wasn't the flagship, it was the prototype. Type network below if you want to know how far this actually goes. The answer is in the next 60 seconds. 5:23 a.m., Joint Task Force Command Center, Houston Federal Building, 7th floor. The digital map on the primary display screen shows 38 red markers pulsing across Harris, Fort Bend, Brazoria, Galveston, and Jefferson counties. The scoreboard is updating in real time. 8.1 tons of narcotics seized. Cocaine, fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine, all confirmed. $61.3 million in cash and frozen assets. 47 firearms, 14 armored vehicles, 3 military-grade encrypted server racks, 129 arrests across 9 simultaneous raid sites, and 1 tunnel. 340 feet long, sealed, documented, photographed from every angle. But the agent standing at the back of that command center, Morse Bafdine, senior investigator Dion Whitaker, 19 years in federal law enforcement, is not looking at the scoreboard. He is looking at the final file from the blueprint folder, the one with the map, the one with the 3 city flags. He's been quiet for 4 minutes. His supervisor asks him what he's reading. He says only this: "We hit the branch. We haven't touched the root." Comment justice below if you believe the people at the top of this system deserve to face the same consequences as anyone else. The silent architect behind the Houston network is not Judge Colton. She is a node. You're a critical one, but not the origin point. The blueprint file makes it clear. There's one individual above every compromised official on the roster. One name whose identity had been shielded by a single structural decision. They were never paid in cash. No wire transfers, no consulting fees, no trust account disbursements. Their compensation was access. Advanced visibility into every federal interdiction timeline before it went operational. Prior knowledge of every major warrant execution. The ability to build, maintain, and protect the most sophisticated domestic cartel corridor in the country. Because they had spent 11 years in a position that gave them the authority to approve federal contractor credentials and government-grade encryption access. His name is Raymond Gordon Ashworth, retired Deputy Regional Director of the Southwest Federal Enforcement Liaison Office. 14 years of service. 3 commendations. A farewell ceremony attended by 2 senators and a federal appellate judge. He is arrested at a resort in Scottsdale, Arizona at 2:09 p.m. on the same day the tunnel is photographed. He does not say a single word. His attorney files for bail within 4 hours. The request is denied. Hit like if you believe that titles, commendations, and a farewell ceremony mean nothing when you've sold your oath to a cartel. Back in Houston, the community is beginning to understand the scope of what has just been uncovered. In Harris County last year, 2,311 people died of drug overdoses. Federal toxicology reports trace 63% of those deaths to fentanyl sourced through this exact distribution corridor. Not a different network. This one. The one that ran beneath a federal judge's wine cellar on 340 feet of cartel-poured concrete. 61 trafficking survivors are recovered across 9 raid sites during the operation. Agents in Galveston recover 17 individuals from a transit house operating under the cover of a short-term rental property management company. 11 of them have been held for more than 2 weeks. One woman, when agents open the door and tell her she is free, does not move immediately. She asks quietly, looking at the floor. "So what? Whether it is actually true this time, it takes 4 agents to process that question without breaking composure. Subscribe right now so you don't miss what happens when the 3 other city networks are taken apart. Dallas, San Antonio, and New Orleans are already running Phase 2. That investigation is coming, and it is darker than this one. The roster pulled from Ashworth's encrypted servers does not stop at 31 names. Analysts working the final partition of his cloud-linked device find an expanded file, 44 names across 4 metropolitan regions, judges, law enforcement supervisors, elected officials at the state level, all receiving structured payments, all protected by the same shell architecture that had moved $61.3 million through Houston's commercial real estate market without triggering a single federal flag. The system hadn't been infiltrated, it had been franchised, the same blueprint, the same shell company structure, the same judicial access strategy, the same border patrol corridor integration model. Copied and deployed with the kind of operational patience that does not come from desperation. It comes from confidence, from years of watching the legitimate system function, and identifying every point where silence was available for purchase. A court clerk who had processed hundreds of Judge Colton's sealed orders sat in an FBI interview room for 31 minutes before she could speak. She had noticed the pattern years ago, had filed an internal question through her office supervisor, Dunn had received a written response explaining the orders fell within standard discretionary sealing authority. Her supervisor's name is on the roster, an honest Border Patrol shift commander who had submitted 3 documented internal complaints, all buried, all unacknowledged, stood outside the command center at 6:47 a.m. and watched the arrest vans pull out of the parking structure. He didn't speak to any reporters. He just watched. This is what institutional betrayal looks like when it is quiet. Not loud, not violent. Just a signature, a sealed order, a buried complaint, a corridor timed to the right 40-minute window on a Tuesday night. Share this video before it gets buried. The people in those arrest vans spent years counting on silence. Don't give it to them. Power does not always need violence. Sometimes it needs a title, a trust account, and a door with freshly oiled hinges 11 feet underground. 129 people are in custody. 8.1 tons of narcotics are off the street. A tunnel is sealed. A judge is indicted. A retired federal director is in a holding facility in Scottsdale without bail. And Raymond Gordon Ashworth, on day 2 of his federal detention, asked for a deal. What he offered federal prosecutors in exchange for cooperation is still under seal, but the 3 city flags on that map, Dallas, San Antonio, New Orleans, they are not hypothetical. They are operational. They have their own tunnel blueprints, their own rosters, their own judges, and federal command is already moving. Hit like if you believe this fight is worth having. Comment your city below if you want to know whether this network reached where you live. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment federal agents open the next door. And share this video. Because the one thing a system built on silence cannot survive is people paying attention. The next investigation drops soon. And the name at the top of that roster? Nobody saw it coming.